On this episode of Purposely Curious, I sit down with my beautiful cousin Nessie Clark, a TV commercial producer, mom, and amazing person overall. She did not pay me for this praise, I swear. She shares with us what goes on behind the scenes in order to bring to life the commercials we all see on our televisions or our phones now on social media apps. So, if you're curious on what commercial production is like, join us and get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, everyone. On today's episode, I have my lovely, beautiful cousin, Nessie Clark. Say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I just drank my coffee. I probably made a sound trying to keep clean sound.
Yeah,
Hi.
So I wanted to have her because we are in completely different fields. You know, I'm like nursing and she does production.
Mm-hmm.
So would you tell people exactly what it is you do? Because I always get confused.
Yeah.
But she's calling the shots out there doing stuff. At least that's what I picture you doing.
Yes, that's what I picture myself doing every day too. So I produce commercials 90% of the time. I do the occasional music video or, documentary style interview series or anything like that. But for the most part, I've been doing commercials for almost 15 years.
Yeah. And, a lot of us see commercials and we see 15, 30 seconds, maybe even a minute, depending on the commercial length, but there's so much that goes into it that we don't realize as people watching TV of everything that goes behind the scenes, whether from writing it, I'm assuming, selling the idea to a company, or do companies reach out to you? Like then the production end of it, the money end of it, hiring actors.
Yeah. Well, you visited me on set one time and you were like, this is so boring. What are you doing for so long? Like, you've been here for 10 hours already. This is a 30-second commercial, right? And I was like, yeah, but it's a whole process that we've been preparing for 3 weeks to put 30 seconds of content out on the air.
Was this in downtown LA?
I don't remember where we were, but
car commercial?
Do you remember you came to visit me and I was like, you want to go watch? Like, this is so exciting. And you were like, is that it? You're just going to do this over and over all day? And I was like, yeah, it's like a really intense car scene or something. And
yeah, I think it was in downtown.
It takes time to perfect it and get it right so that we have options in the editing room. And it's a whole crazy thing.
So now, that was me young. Probably was like, this is boring, but now I'm curious and I want to know what goes into, can you walk us through from the beginning to the actual shooting?
So, it's not common that a production company would sell an idea necessarily. The way that it works, to work backwards from how the process works, is say you have a client and your client is, just for the sake of using something everybody knows, McDonald's. And McDonald's hires an ad agency to do their campaigning and their advertising year after year. So this ad agency would then... Uh-oh. Hello. I thought I locked the door. Hold on. Sorry.
It's okay. We're recording at my cousin's place, and so my cute little nephew just
3-year-old barged in. So should I start over, or
no,
do you think we just
go
keep
ahead.
going? So you would hire an ad agency to develop your marketing campaigns, and that ad agency would come up with things that they write. They have usually, writers and art directors and all sorts of people on staff at these agencies that come up with concepts that will sell based on their demographic and who they're really trying to target at any given time of year. What they don't have are the tools to make it happen in terms of a creative production support position. Sometimes they do have in-house people, but usually they'll find a director that they like or a few directors and they'll put it out, and then they see how that director envisions it. And the directors write a treatment for them, which is this is what it would look like in terms of setting and location, and this is the actor that I'm envisioning, and this is how I want the food to look. You guys are trying to, say you came up with the McRib is back campaign, right? Which was huge. you would say, oh, let's make it retro because the McRib came out in the 70s. Like, let's turn this McDonald's into like a 1970s with disco lights. We'll have girls on roller skates, and, you know, we'll cast people of this look. And so once an ad agency picks who they want to hire, that director hires me. And I take the budget that they have set for this vision and make it all happen in terms of casting, finding the right location, finding the stylist that is going to go and make people look like they came out of the 70s. Like, it's a whole process, right? And it's such a collaboration, but there has to be a person that's going to oversee all of those little things happening. Because a lot of times you have all these creative people, right? But like, you need somebody to keep them in line and be like, all right, like, we're on a schedule and we're on a budget and we're on a deadline, you know, or we have a deadline. So that's kind of where I come in to coordinate all those things. And I have a support team too, a production manager, a production coordinator, a production assistant. Like, there's usually a few people behind me that also help with that, but that's like the long and short of where I come in to make this all happen.
So the director then says, hey, Nessie, I want to hire you for this. This is the idea that I have. This is what I envision. This is the budget. Then you take all that information and you start looking for vendors or actors, or is that how it works?
A lot of times the director already has people that they've worked with before that were great at casting or great at, you know, finding the right location or finding the right design for everything. Like, they have production designers that they work with all the time. So a lot of times they just hand me the list of who they like to work with, you know, especially if you're with a big name director. They're like, these are my people. So you hire those people, but you're kind of the middle person between those people and the director and the ad agency and the client that has hired you to make it happen. Because they don't often have direct conversations. I'm like a middle person between all the creative people that make the commercial happen and then the people on the other side that wrote the idea and are paying for it.
Right.
So, you know, I'm like an overpaid middle person.
Overpaid middle. So now that you've kind of hired all these people, you know, do you guys then set a date of when you guys are shooting, or like what would be the next step once you've gotten everything you needed?
You know, the date is usually set before I'm even hired.
Okay.
Because once they've chosen the director, that director probably has a busy schedule already. And so they say, oh, you know, we have this idea. We want to film it in the next couple weeks. When is this director available? And say you pick Thursday the 23rd. So by like the first of the month, you want to have everybody in line with like that date of the 23rd in the future, and then you can start lining everything up. So I usually don't choose the date. Usually when I start a job, there's already a calendar in place, and I just have to make sure we stick to it.
Yeah.
And we stick to all the deadlines that are leading up to that filming day. And then there's a post-production calendar that follows that filming day, which is like the editorial deadlines. So like by the 2nd of the next month, we want to see the first cut, and we want to be able to ship it to the, you know, we have an air date of like this date. So there's a lot that goes into it. And what's crazy now, like we're talking about 30-second spots. People don't have that attention span anymore, believe it or not. Most of the commercials I work on now are 6 seconds long.
No way.
That's all people have the attention span for. And like most of the time you're like skip ad. Like you're just trying to get out of the ad, which is like really like has always been a little bit of the sad part for me, because my kids are like, oh, commercials. And I'm like, hey, commercials put a roof over our head. Like, why are you skipping them?
Yeah.
But yeah, they went from being 30 seconds to 15 seconds to now we shoot everything instead of 16:9, like horizontal widescreen, to being like the phone, which is 9:16 and 6 seconds long. So it's like an ever evolving industry of having to understand what people will sit through and watch, because a lot of people don't have 30 seconds anymore.
So how has that changed as far as like, you know, you had your production, is the budget then less for 6 seconds or the same, or?
I mean, The budgets just depend on the clients, but what has happened is that instead of making one really amazing 30-second spot, which does happen sometimes still, of course, they're still out there. Sometimes a client just wants to make like 5-6 second ads that they can use on Instagram, that they can use on Facebook, and they just put them out on social media only. And, you know, they get more content as opposed to like one big budget commercial. You have like 5 little ones that we can film in one day.
Yeah.
So
I guess it's a good thing that you brought that up, because now I'm thinking of, you know, when you started your career to now, like how is it evolving now? Because like you said, our attention span is, you know, not very, like, I guess long. And then we have TikTok and, you know, like, has it been hard for a lot of, you know, not just you, but other, you know, maybe the older companies, are they having a hard time adjusting with where everyone's going now? Or,
you know, I don't know if, okay, here's something that I've noticed. And I don't know if this answers the question, so I'm sorry. But as I get older, what I notice consistently is everybody around me from when I started seems to be getting younger. And I know that it's a part, obviously, it's a part of like, I'm in my late 30s now. And so, of course, there are people that are heads of companies that are 30 years old now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so young. But when I started out, it didn't feel like such a race to be relevant as it does now. Like right now, everybody has to have like a young, hot, like hip wardrobe stylist or, you know, a creative team from the ad agency side that is really in tune with like what's popular. And okay, so TikTok, like let's make sure we have like Jason Derulo or whoever is like popular right now. We have to make sure that it hits this, this, and this. And I don't remember it being as much like that when I was in my mid 20s and I started, or even early 20s. I just felt like it was a little more corporate, and now it feels like everything's trying to be really cool. And let's not forget that people don't have a long attention span.
Yeah. So it's an adjustment period.
I would imagine it is hard for old school directors and people in this industry to keep up, but I think they bring in a lot of people to keep things relevant.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever been asked to do like TikToks by a client or anything?
Have I been asked to do a TikTok? No. I mean, we definitely shoot stuff for social media, so I'm sure ads end up on TikTok, but we've never like shot a TikTok.
Yeah.
We did do one time a very expensive, what was that Mannequin challenge with the song with the, do you remember where like people would freeze and it would go? So we did this one with the cast of Hairspray Live that was on ABC, and like Martin Short was in it, and I think Jennifer Hudson was the star of the show at the time when it aired, when they did that musical live. And we just like during their lunch break did this mannequin challenge, and I was like, this is crazy that this client is like spending all this money to do a thing that, you know, you would do at like a wedding, like, you know, like just messing around. Yeah. But it was their way of staying relevant. Like it was trending and it was all over the news, and they were like, look at the cast of Hairspray doing a mannequin challenge during their lunch hour. Yeah. But we had a whole production team there that day. We had 3 cameras. We built props for it, so it looked like their coffee was frozen in time in the air. Like we had, you know, all kinds of professionals making this mannequin challenge look casual. So,
but it I guess it helped because they were getting media attention.
Exactly. It was all about just being relevant and like, you know, creating a conversation around the show that was going to air in a few weeks.
Yeah. So now, obviously, because you've been doing it for so long, when do you feel, how old were you when you felt like, oh, you've made it?
I don't know if I've made it, but I guess, I don't know. Once in a while, I work on a really big production with 300 extras. And
wow, that's,
you know,
huge.
Yeah, like people, you know, directors screaming through a megaphone, and like, you know, you're there on a massive set and you look around and you're like, wow, I did this. I made all this happen. It's really cool that all these people are here. And I sort of orchestrated this huge day, and then you see it on TV and it comes to life and you're just proud of yourself for, doing it. In the middle of it, sometimes the stress levels and the politics and everything that, you're carrying on your shoulders feels like I can never see I don't see the end of this job. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But then afterwards, when you look back, you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. And I think that's what keeps you hooked into this business is like with commercials, it's constantly changing. I'm always working on something different, something new, and I don't get bored. So you look back and you're like, oh, I want to do that again. Like that was such a great accomplishment. It was hard, but we did it, and there it is on screen, and you're proud of it.
And then, so you said that you mostly do commercials, but on occasion you may do something else. Is it really different when you look into other projects that are not your typical commercials? Or is it the same?
At the end of the day, no. I mean, I've never worked on a movie or a TV show. And I know that can be a little bit different, but at the end of the day, it's all similar. Equipment by, a few years into being in my career, I was like, oh gosh, I'll never know any of these technical terms because they're always changing, but you really start to learn things like the back of your hand. And I don't know, you get so much experience with every job that it's interesting.
Now, obviously with COVID, did it really change? I'm assuming because all of us are adjusting to these new regulations, these new changes, and I'm assuming new costs. Because now, you're having to get people tested, I'm assuming, to work. I don't know if does the Department of Health require you guys to do those things? Or is that something you're just making happen? Or is that a requirement, I guess, from them? Or
so at first it was not a requirement. Some productions tested you, and it was great, and it was a blessing if you were getting tested to work on a set. But they really didn't have to. And so there were a couple of jobs where I would get a call and I would ask, is there COVID testing in the budget? And if they would say no, there's no testing, I would turn it down because I didn't feel comfortable. You're in tight quarters with a lot of people in a tight set. And even if everybody's in PPE, at the time, I just didn't feel, when we first reopened last summer in July, I didn't feel like it was worth it. I didn't want to go there and be scared the whole time and keep my distance. Like, I mean, we still follow a lot of measures, but at least that everybody there gets tested. Like every 72 hours, we get nasal swabs. And now it is a requirement by the unions, because I work on mostly union jobs, and you have to actually pay people now to go get tested. Because if I'm going on a Sunday morning before going to work on Monday to take, I have to take time out of my day. Now I have to get paid to do that. Before, people were like, oh, I don't want to go on Sunday morning to a lab and, put in my time, my free time.
Yeah.
And, for free. And so then they made it that you had to get paid $175 to go get tested in your free time. So I think that's like a nice little bonus for people, an incentive to keep it safe.
Yeah. So worst case scenario, someone comes out positive. Like how I guess my thing is I'm seeing it from we have all these scenarios that if this happens, then we do this, we do that. So I'm assuming now you guys have like plans. If do you guys have backup for actors or backup for, technicians? That's like added stuff that you have to schedule now.
So first of all, my job is so much harder in COVID because I have to worry about that whole aspect. So not only am I worrying about the crew and their rates and the equipment and the cost and the insurance and the client being happy and the director being happy. Now I have to make sure nobody gets sick on my set. So it's a major responsibility to make sure that you're following all the rules, especially because we have actors on set with no masks. Sometimes they're kissing. Sometimes they're, touching, whatever it is. Like you definitely get into situations that are risky, and if somebody were to test positive, they can't come to work the next day. But more importantly, then we have to go back and see, well, who were they with? And all those people that were exposed can't come to work. So it's happened a few times where, you know, for example, somebody tested positive and all the actors were with this person the day before. So now none of our actors can come to work. And we don't have backup actors sitting there.
Okay. So you have to then stop production.
So we stop and we start calling around and say, you know, we really liked this other actress that came in for the role. Is she available to come right now? Right this second.
Oh.
And then they get there and you test them. And that time that person tested positive when they arrived. So then our backup was not a viable option. So then we have to send that person home. And then you're like, oh no. And you look around and you're like, well, what about her? She's pretty good. Like,
she's like emptying the trash bin.
Exactly. It was a nightmare of a day when that happened to me, but such a learning experience of like keeping your cool and pivoting. And like, I think we've all learned to do that in the last year.
Yeah.
So much. Everybody. Like, it doesn't matter if you're an actor or a producer or a nurse, like you've had to stop and pivot. Okay, the plan changed. We can't do this. Everybody's positive for COVID. And I'm not saying this is a normal scenario. Like, we've been a super safe industry. Yeah. That just happened to be a fluke, right?
Yeah. A learning experience in the end.
Yeah. And from what I've heard in my industry, and, you know, like I have so many friends who do the same thing, there haven't been any outbreaks because we've been so safe. But that day, I think we were like 7 hours behind schedule and we still wrapped on time. We still made our day. I mean, everybody just hustled and we didn't start filming till like 4:00 in the afternoon. And we shot the whole commercial. We did it. It turned out great. We had a celebrity there. He was cool. He was like, it's all good. Like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Like, thank you guys for being so safe and for making sure that nobody with COVID came to work today. Like, you guys are really responsible. So. Yeah.
So in this scenario, for example, let's just say this happens again, your timeline stays the same. Your deadlines don't, you can't like say like, we need another day. You're still expected to meet the deadline.
No, I think in that scenario, we did a lot of calls as we were trying to figure it out. You know, we got our client on the phone and we said, hey, this is what happened. Should we just shut down and we'll pick this up next week, or we'll shoot with the same actors that should have been here today in 2 weeks? It was a really tough call. But at the end of the day, we decided that, you know, we were all there and the director had a limited availability for that month. And so we were like, I think we can make this work. Let's just make a few calls. Let's stop and think about it. And if we can use the daylight that we have now and light when it gets dark and make it match, then let's just do it. And that's what we did. And we just reorganized our day. We moved inside when it got dark outside. We brought in extra lights. Like, it ended up costing them a little more money, but we didn't have to shut down and send a bunch of people home and then start from scratch 2 weeks later. So that was just the decision that was made that day, and it worked out fine.
Oh, good.
And I would like to say that I think I would have expected myself or somebody else to panic and start crying and being like, oh my gosh, my day is ruined. But that's one of the biggest characteristics and skills that I've had to like really perfect is just maintaining my composure when things go wrong, because I don't get paid to have an easy time. Like, I get paid to figure things out and solve problems. That's my job, is to be the person who everybody comes to when there's an issue, and I'll, you know, come up with some sort of a solution to make everybody happy and make it all work and do what makes sense. Like, there's always that person, right, that everybody goes to and turns to. Yeah. And you just have to make sure that that person isn't a reactive, emotional decision maker. You just have to take a breath. So yeah, that's been important to just really get good at.
So after, you were like, I handled that really well.
You know, a lot of people told me that day, we can't believe how calm under pressure you were, because that was a really crazy situation that we were in with all these people being sent home left and right. It was scary. And it wasn't, again, because there was like this, you know, trickle down exposure that happened on set. Like, it was just the climate we were living in. It was like around Christmas time. There was so many cases in LA, like one in every 20 people had COVID. It was unfortunate, and nobody wanted to get COVID. But if you had to go to work in the morning, like, you were just putting yourself at risk of getting it. So yeah, people people tested positive.
Yeah.
It's just what was
And
happening.
it was the biggest wave that the nation had seen, so
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
It was inevitable. I mean, you
Yeah.
have 75 people working together every day. One of them is bound to come out positive on any given day. It's just what was happening in the world.
Mm-hmm. And so now with things kind of, you know, with less cases, do you feel like people are more comfortable working? I guess I'm sure there were people initially who maybe were nervous to work, but do you feel like there's some more, I guess, more normal now as far as your jobs, or is this still a little bit of like...
It's still weird. I mean, I have to wear an N95 and a face shield on set every day, which is actually really hard on your voice because you're yelling so loud. Nobody can understand what you're saying. Like, it's a really protected, safe environment that we work in. But yes, now people are so much more comfortable being there. There were a lot of people that didn't work for a long time because they were saying, I can't take that risk. I can't be on a set right now. It's just not safe for me, you know? Or there are people who said, I'll do the job, but I'll do it remotely. Like, I'll be your script supervisor, but I have to be on a screen on Zoom, and I'll talk to the director that way. Or I'm happy to scout locations for you, but I'm going to look on the internet and I'm going to send you pictures and I'm going to do my job remotely. So, I mean, even I still work, I'd say 95% from home, except for when I'm filming or when I'm looking at locations in person. I'm pretty much home in this room doing my job in here, making calls, sending emails.
Yeah.
But it's definitely there's much less hesitancy. And now people are vaccinated. So people are like, I'm vaccinated. I don't have to get tested. I don't need to go get tested. But we are still testing every 72 hours. If you're working that week, you have to be tested. So.
Yeah. And I think that's something that people don't realize is that just because you are vaccinated, you can still get COVID. You just may not have any symptoms or very mild symptoms, but you can still spread it, you know? And so since you don't know if everyone's vaccinated, so it's probably better just to be safe. But I understand why people say that. Yeah.
And I wish we were switching to vaccine cards. Sure. Like, that would be great because then you don't have to have a Q-tip up your nose every 72 hours. It's not like pleasurable, but at the same time, it's not a foolproof way of knowing that somebody doesn't have COVID. And I think it violates some sort of HIPAA law, right? If you're checking for vaccine cards, I don't know that you could do that necessarily.
Yeah.
But people try.
I think right now definitely the government's going to have to figure something out, because I think that's kind of like the debate in schools and, you know, jobs, like, is it required? Can you force someone to get it? And, you know, it's just a bunch of, plus the HIPAA law. So,
and it's so expensive to test people for us.
Yeah.
I mean, we're spending like $100 and something per COVID test per person that goes to work every day. Like, it's an insane amount of money.
Are you going through a lab?
We use different labs on every job. It just depends. I have my favorites, but I'm not trying to plug them on your show.
No. Anyway, but yes. So going back to your career and everything, what you do, what would you say was one of the most memorable jobs you've ever done that you will never forget?
I mean, I always get excited when I work with a celebrity. I love that. I think it's like so cool to have had dreams of being in the film business and ending up in commercials. And so you end up working with a lot of not famous actors. So whenever you have like a celebrity, I think it's cool. But I don't know. I guess, you know, I did a commercial right before the pandemic where we had, it was an ad for the new coffee subscription for Panera, and it was like
they have a coffee subscription.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, you can like pay monthly to have like unlimited Panera coffee, which apparently is supposed to be really good. I've never had it, I don't think. I mean, I've probably had it, but
yeah, they
make iced coffees and lattes and all these different types of coffee, and now you can just pay a subscription, walk in, get coffee whenever you want, or you can get it shipped to your door. It sounds like I'm advertising for them now, but I'm not. But we did this ad where we had like people running through the streets of like Culver City, and we filmed in a back lot out at like Disney Ranch in Newhall, where people were like running through the back lot and everybody's running and pounding on the windows of this Panera like, we want our coffee. And it was really cool to just, like I was saying before, look around and be like, this is a massive production for a commercial for coffee. But, you feel really proud of the final product when you watch it, because it was funny. People are like, I don't know. You'd have to watch it, but it was good. I liked it. That was a fun one.
Yeah. Any other ones you might remember that you liked?
I mean, I've had a lot of like, I'm always the person who thinks these commercials, like when you watch them on TV, you're like, that was dumb, or like, that's not funny. But I'm always laughing on set. Like whenever, like I have to like sound mixers yell at me, because I will laugh at any joke an actor tells, because I think it's great. And I'll turn to people and be like, that was hilarious. Didn't you think I've had like a lot of moments recently where I've just laughed out loud. But I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite. I liked working. I did an ad a long time ago with Ryan Seacrest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that guy was such a pro. Like, he walked onto the set, he did his job, he had 10 minutes in between setups to take a break, and in between he went and he sat down, he listened to demos for his radio show, he did an interview with like Vogue magazine, and he was like, are you ready for me? He like came back on set.
Wow.
And he just did his lines, and I was like, damn, like, he's a pro. Just, you have these moments where you're just in awe of how hard some people work in the entertainment industry.
Now, without saying any names, have you ever run into someone who you were just like, oh my God, they're terrible to work with, like celebrity wise?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is it often or no?
No. I think most like famous people that I've worked with, when they're on a commercial for like a day or two, are pretty easygoing and happy to be there and kind to the crew. It hasn't happened too much, but it has happened where you're just like, ugh, like, diva, gosh, how do you get there? Like, how do you become so in your own world where you don't realize that like you're not a nice person?
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen too often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this has been really fun. I've learned a lot. I can see the way you were talking about it, how proud you were of it. So I'm proud of you, cousin.
Thanks.
And I've kind of seen, like I said, I did go on set that one time, and I guess because I was young, I was like, okay, well, this is boring. Like, so just to hear you talk about it, like, so much goes into it, and I think, it's amazing that we take for granted, and those 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and now apparently 6 seconds commercials and ads, that there's a lot of people behind that to make that happen. So I'm going to find it really interesting in the future to see how things continue to change, if they continue to change, because social media really changed the ballgame for a lot of aspects of different industries. So I thought that, I didn't realize you were doing 6-second commercials.
It's crazy. And just the fact that you shoot things with this 16:9 aspect ratio, which just means it's like horizontal, right? Like widescreen mode. But people don't really look at things in that aspect ratio anymore. Your phones are vertical.
Yeah.
And most of the content, even I find myself taking videos of my kids vertically because I want to put them on my Instagram story, or I want to look at it on my phone and not have to turn my phone. So everything's changing with just content in general.
Yeah.
It's different now than it was before.
Yeah.
But I do love it. It's a really fun industry. I've met so many nice people over the years. I've also met not nice people, but then you just don't work with them again.
Did you meet your husband through working?
And I met my husband. Yeah. That was one nice person I met. I mean, the beauty, just like the beauty of being in commercials is also that, say you do work with somebody that isn't nice, you don't ever have to work with them again if you don't want to. That job is over in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then if that person calls you and says, hey, you want to come work with me again? You're like, I'm not available. I'm sorry. I'm already on something else.
Yeah.
And you just don't work with them. So it's not like getting stuck in a job where ugh, I hate my coworker and I have to see them every day until I leave this job or they leave this job. It's very easy to surround yourself with only people you like and only people that you respect and like to work with. And yeah, my husband I met on a set and we never ever worked together. But about 2 weeks ago, I was in a pinch. And I was like, honey, I really need you to come be the first AD on this commercial because my person just dropped out. And he was like, fine, I'm available that day. And
he's like, let me look at my schedule.
I know. He's like, let me get a babysitter.
I'll call you back.
Yeah. And he came with me and it was so nice because I just knew we were in good hands in terms of like who was going to be running the ship on set.
So for those who don't know what AD stands for, that's...
So he's a first assistant director.
Okay.
So he's the person that sits next to the director all day or stands next to the director all day and is basically yelling to the crew to like hurry up or roll or cut or, you know, basically he's running the schedule of the day. And if things are getting behind schedule, the producer goes up to him and is like, excuse me, sir, you are
behind
30 minutes behind schedule. What are you going to do about it? And what are you going to tell this director to do? Or what do you need me to tell this director to do to get us moving in that direction? So it's definitely a really important person on any set.
Yeah.
They really keep things in line.
Yeah. Oh.
He makes sure that people don't walk into the shot that aren't supposed to be in the shot.
That would be me. I'm so like stupid. Like I'm like, oops, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that a camera? Yeah, it happens a lot more than you think. So it's important for the first assistant director to set up all his people in the right doorways and the right spots so that it looks like it's supposed to look like and not strangers wandering around.
Yeah. Did you see that? Would he be the one that, or no? Was it Game of Thrones where there was like a coffee cup in one of the scenes?
Yeah.
Like something like that, or no?
No, so.
Who fucked up there?
The art department. When in doubt, blame the art department for like any problems on a set.
I was like that. Yeah. I remember that went viral.
For sure. That was a big.
And couldn't the editing people just like.
Yeah, you would have think that they would have cleaned that up in post.
Because that made me realize, like, was this rushed or what is up with that?
I mean, the whole last season of Game of Thrones was so rushed. They even forgot to like remove the coffee cup in post production. They're like rushing to tie all the loose ends after eight seasons or however long.
Oh,
it just goes to show you. But yeah, the art department are the people who, you know, make it look the way it's supposed to look in terms of like the interior design and all the props the actors are holding. So that was obviously an art department fuck up.
Oh, well, that's funny. But yeah, well, thank you for joining.
I'm so glad that we did this.
Yes, I've been wanting to have her. We've talked about other subjects, but I was like, you know, I think we should talk about what it is you do because I'm curious about that. And I feel like people don't realize what goes into a commercial, you know. So thank you so much.
I didn't know when you asked if this would be an interesting topic for anybody, but obviously I seem to like talking about it just fine. So hopefully people like listening. But I do think that we should do another episode where we don't talk about work and talk about something juicy. Because
I'm totally down.
I think we should have some drinks and do like a juicy podcast.
I'm totally down. And you know, surprisingly, those are the ones that every subject is different. So I get messages from listeners, but the ones when me and Leonie are having different conversations, or like the one that I did with my friend Anna about answering men's questions.
Oh yeah.
People got
heated.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. People were like, oh, like who's this Patrick guy? And I messaged Patrick because that was one of the first questions.
I know which Patrick it was.
Yes, you do.
Do I do?
Do you know him?
I thought maybe it was him, but I don't want to assume.
So what I do is I'll post like I want people to send in questions or stuff on Instagram, and then I'll pick from there. Sometimes I get really dumb ones, but I just kind of pick. But the ones sometimes they're not questions, but just certain subjects. People are like, "Ooh, I like that." Mm-hmm. But at the same time, part of me is like, "Well, but I want to know these other things."
Right.
And, you know, I don't want it to just be about like juicy stuff. But
gossiping on the air.
But those tend to do the best. My Amber Heard one is like the
Right.
most listened to,
Well,
which
I
is
think
so weird.
that you are really good at like researching something so deeply that you learn a lot about this one specific topic by listening to some of those types of podcasts. But like, it probably is also just fun to throw in an occasional, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh yeah, it's a
chat
lot of
sesh.
fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I'm down to do it. So
Yeah,
and yeah,
you
some
should.
cocktails.
Some cocktails,
Yes.
and we'll find something fun to
Yes,
talk
let
about.
it flow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you
and
for having me.
yes, and thank you everyone for listening, and I will see you guys next time. Bye. That was episode 59 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms. And follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely the letter C Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.